Good morning!
Hi, I'm Georgia, and today I will be comparing two films based on their techniques and telling you which one I think did better. The first film is The Truman Show, directed in 1998 by Peter Weir. The second film is Don't Worry Darling, directed by Olivia Wilde in 2022. Both films follow the main character on a search for truth while living in a simulated reality set in the 1950s. They both explore themes of suburban dystopia as well as manipulation. Cinematography. Director Peter Weir has constructed The Truman Show in a way that we, as audience members, view Truman the same way that the audience within the film sees him. Often there are iris shots or fisheye lenses being used in order to present his life through a filter. The visible separation caused by the lenses creates a barrier between us and Truman, and yet we are still able to view him very closely. Due to this and the disguised placement of cameras, it is easy to feel as if we are intruding on Truman's life while watching the film. Additionally, the camera will zoom in during scenes, allowing us to focus on key points of a frame and remind us that Christoph, the producer of the reality show that Truman is living in, has complete control over what we see.
Cue the sun.
Christoph's power is also shown through low-angle close-up shots, displaying his obsessive manner as he peers at the screen. In this scene, his tense face is illuminated by high-key lighting, and we watch as he gazes intensely through his glasses, desperately hoping that he can still manipulate Truman.
Do it!
To accompany this, there are mostly high-angle shots when showing Truman, emphasizing his weakness and submissive feelings as his life is being controlled by Christoph. As we look down at him, we are forced to feel as if Truman is a product and we are buying it. Because of Peter Weir's creative choices in cinematography, he makes us fall victim to the theme of consumerism, either making us feel that he has control over us, or we have control over Truman. When watching Don't Worry Darling, I noticed not much of a difference in camera angles and shot types. In this scene containing Alice and Frank, the creator and controller of the city they're living in, there is no variation in angling. Despite the assumed difference the characters are supposed to have, it is not represented through cinematography. This creates an uncertainty in position and power, whereas in The Truman Show, the clear contrast of angles allows us to easily identify the different character roles within the story. Mise-en-scene. A majority of the setting we see during The Truman Show is the streets of Sea Haven, a bright and colourful place where everyone seems to be happy and unified. When looking at the town, the people and props are used to display the robotic ways of Truman's surroundings. In wide shots like these, we are able to view large groups of people, all moving as one at the same time. This highlights the controlled environment that Truman is living in, and creates contrast when he begins to fall out of his usual pattern. At the start of the film, Truman seems to easily follow those around him without question. However, in this scene, Truman is rushed onto the busy street by security, confused and unsure of his reality. His movements are completely different from the consistent and steady ones of those around him, showcasing the surreal aspect of the setting and the shift of pattern in the movie. Though the arrangement of sets in Don't Worry Darling is visually appealing, it is heavily focused on pleasing the eye rather than conveying characters' emotions or communicating the story. Often scenes of the setting are repeated, yet the props and people stay the same, not adding any significance to the storyline. For example, the frame here showcases the home's interior, presenting the mid-20th century style, yet not having any significance to the scene. However, in The Truman Show, Peter Weir manages to include shots that are not only visually appealing, but contain hints to the storyline. Many times in the movie, props are provided to showcase the common theme of consumerism. Truman's wife Meryl is seen to advertise multiple products to him while mimicking that stereotypical salesperson voice.
I've tasted other cocos. This is the best.
Sound design. Like the cinematography, almost all the sound we hear during The Truman Show plays as it would in the reality show itself. Because the music is heard by the public domain and is easily licensed for television, the only music used in The Truman Show is old classical music. Peter Weir has chosen certain sounds to not only build tension within scenes, but also to represent the story and characters. Towards the end of the film, we watch as Truman discovers the border of Sea Haven, revealing the fake walls that have been surrounding him. At first, there is silence, an intense and quiet moment while Truman begins to put the pieces of his life together. Slowly, we start to hear the classical music build up again, matching the increasing level of Truman's emotions. Finally, we reach the most climactic point of the scene, when Truman grows angry and starts to bang at the wall. We can tell by looking at him that Truman is most likely screaming and crying at this point, however the music is blocking out any noise he is making. The peaceful sound is very contradictory to how Truman is feeling in the moment, and Peter Weir's choice to use this serves to explain further meaning. Similar to how Truman's friends often brush off his concerns of his reality, the music serves as a distraction from his obvious discomfort. Because as we know, some audience may not want to tune in any longer if they feel guilty about what they're seeing. So, Christoph could have used this contradicting music in order to almost sugarcoat the pain that Truman was feeling. Now, something that I thought was done well in Don't Worry Darling was the sound design. Olivia Wilde chose to incorporate eerie music, which created an unsettling feeling to contrast with the relaxing and pleasing exterior of the film. In this scene, Alice is seen ballet dancing with the other residents in Victory, an automatically pleasing thing to watch because of their syncrecy. This becomes a major contrast to when Alice notices something and begins to move out of order from the others. As soon as this happens, we hear the music change. The mood immediately transforms and the sound is somewhat disturbing, matching the switch in Alice's demeanor. Not only does the sound create a different atmosphere, but it is also in time with Alice's unusual movements, giving an uncanny sense of control to go along with the scene's theme. Editing. An effective editing technique used in The Truman Show is parallel editing. This is used to jump between two different scenes happening at the same time. Parallel editing can increase the feeling of suspense as well as the pacing within a scene. In the scene where Truman is reunited with his father, we go back and forth between watching Truman and watching Christoph's reaction to the reunion. Because Truman has lived his whole life believing that his father was dead, this scene is very significant for him as well as the audience. The suspense of the scene is stretched out even more when the film cuts back to Christoph anticipating just as much as we are. The clips are slow and intense, making the viewers more impatient throughout the scene. Peter Weir chose to use this editing technique to allow for a more dramatic moment at the height of the scene, which highlights the character's reaction as well as ours. Unlike how Peter Weir used the dragged out clips for moments in which it was necessary, Olivia Wilde has chosen to use this technique constantly throughout Don't Worry Darling. Though having built up length can add tension to a scene, having too many long clips will create a common lack of interest from whoever's watching. While watching Don't Worry Darling, I felt that everything was a little too dragged out. This made it hard to differentiate which scenes were supposed to be more climactic than others, and instead gave the film a more monotone feeling. So, in conclusion, I think it's safe to say that Peter Weir did a better job at conveying his story through cinematic techniques in The Truman Show than Olivia Wilde did in Don't Worry Darling. Georgia out. Bye-bye, everybody.
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.